Imagine a world where the most powerful people aren't decided by how much money they have or how many followers they get on social media. In this world, being born into the right family or fighting bravely in battles could make you a ruler or a noble. This is the world of medieval Europe, a time when kings, queens, knights, and nobles ruled the land. It might sound like a fairy tale, but it's a real part of history that shaped the world we live in today. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe was a chaotic place. The Roman Empire had been the dominant power for centuries, keeping order and stability. But when it fell, different groups of people, known as Barbarian Tribes, moved in and took control. These tribes included the Goths, Huns, Vandals, and Franks. They were fierce warriors, who often fought each other for land and power. In this new world, leaders emerged in different ways. Some were from old Roman families who had intermarried with the barbarians. Others were powerful landowners who had large farms worked by slaves and protected by private armies. In England and France, many of these new leaders were descendants of chieftains from tribes like the Angles, Saxons, and Franks. In Germany, some of the most respected families had been revered for generations, and their status was recognized by other princes who had to approve their ennoblement. Warfare was a constant part of life in medieval Europe. Men who showed bravery and skill in battle could rise to power. At first, these distinctions often ended with the death of the person who earned them, but over time, the idea of patrilineal descent became more common. This meant that titles and lands could be passed down from father to son, creating dynasties. As these new noble families rose to power, they began to adopt titles that we still recognize today. The word duke comes from the Latin word dux, meaning a military commander. Earl comes from the Anglo-Saxon words earle or ceorl, which referred to a free man of high status. Count or comte comes from the Latin comes, meaning a companion of a great personage. Baron is from the Teutonic word baron, meaning a warrior. Margrave and marquess come from the Latin marca, meaning a frontier or border territory. These titles were not just names. They represented real power and responsibility. At the bottom of the noble hierarchy were the knights. Originally, the word knight meant a free-born farm worker. By the 11th century, knights had become professional cavalrymen who lived in fortified manors and were bound by a code of chivalry. They served higher nobles, such as dukes, earls, counts, barons, or marquesses, and in return, they received gifts like horses, falcons, and weapons. While the nobles were powerful, the kings were the most powerful of all. Being a king was not just about ruling. It was about being a symbol of authority and glory. Kings were often seen as chosen by the gods, or even descended from them. They were expected to lead their people in battle, host grand feasts for their vassals, and distribute rewards like land, gold, and rings. The concept of kingship had its roots in the customs of the barbarian tribes. Chieftains like Ermanaric, Alaric, Attila, and Clovis were chosen by their warriors for their fighting skills and leadership. They were often carried on shields to a pagan temple or sacred stone, where they were acclaimed as leaders. These early chieftains surrounded themselves with loyal followers called Gasindi or comitatus, who would later become the nobles of the medieval period. The rise of Christianity played a significant role in the development of kingship. When barbarian chieftains converted to Christianity, their warriors often followed suit. Christian priests then began to play a crucial role in the coronation of kings. In the 5th century, a bishop invested a Frankish chief, and by the time of Pepin the Short, Charlemagne's father, elaborate ceremonies and symbols were used. The liturgy drew on Old Testament precedents, and kings were anointed and crowned with a royal scepter. They were also required to make promises to defend the church, the poor, and the weak. Hereditary monarchy, where the throne passed from father to son, became more common during the medieval period. While some early chieftains were chosen for their merit, by the end of the Middle Ages, the succession of royal princes had become absolute in many countries. In England, France, and Spain, the crown was passed down through the male line without question. The Holy Roman Empire was an exception, as the emperor was elected by a group of designated electors. But even this was often a formality, with the Habsburg family maintaining a stranglehold on the title after 1437. The Church's influence on kingship was significant. Proclamations from the Pope, called bulls, were recognized in royal courts, and canon law was followed. However, strong sovereigns often sought to limit the Church's power. In the 12th century, England's King Henry II had a bitter feud with the Archbishop of Canterbury, which ended in the Archbishop's murder. Similarly, the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa was in constant conflict with the popes as he tried to establish German dominance in Western Europe. The world of medieval Europe was a complex and often violent place. It was a time when power and status were closely tied to birth, battle, and the favor of the Church. The nobles and kings who ruled during this period laid the foundation for the modern political systems we have today. Understanding their world helps us appreciate the challenges and triumphs that have shaped our own.